Church. We're the Mulholland family from Braid, and we're going to play a number of tunes for you. Thank you very much. And that was Air Tune by Jerry O'Connor.
I'm going to sing a wee song called Beautiful Glendon. And when I was writing this song, I had a couple in mind living in the city, but originally from the Glens, and who were wanting to come back after they'd had their family. And when I was thinking about this song, I was driving up through the Glens myself one day, and I was reminded of one of the wee tricks that we used to play with our kids to occupy them when we were going for a Sunday drive or something. And we used to play all kinds of games like to name all the 9 glens or to name all the counties in Ireland. And that kind of gave me an idea for the chorus of this song. So I'm going to sing it for you now. It's called Beautiful Glendon. We set off through the city streets with the promise of ice cream. Children in the back seat, Sunday clothes, faces clean. We soon ran out of nursery rhymes, nearly drove us round the bend. So we played a game to pass the time we called Sing All the 9 Glens. Glenarm, Glen Glencloy, Glenballyeman, Glenariff and Glenchesk. And every native Glensman holds his own Glen to his breast. Glencorp, Glentazy and Glenann are charming everyone. But I first fell in love with you in beautiful Glendon. We ate our picnic on the beach, built castles everywhere. Children ran around and screeched, wind playing in their hair. You said before they get too old we should maybe come back here. And half a promise I could hold was music to my ear. Oh, it's never been that easy, though for work it's hard to find. That's why my brothers, sisters, cousins all left the place behind. They're teachers, sailors, engineers, layers of tarmac, and some of them may never make it back to Glenarm, Glencloy, Glenballyeman, Glenariff and Glenchesk. And every native Glensman holds his own Glen to his breast. Glencorp, Glentazy and Glenann are charming everyone. But I first fell in love with you in beautiful Glendon. So many years have come and gone, the time goes by so fast. I comb the beach alone at dawn for echoes of the past. If I was again a young man, I wouldn't change a thing. I'd still build castles out of sand and all the louder sing. Glenarm, Glencloy, Glenballyeman, Glenariff and Glenchesk. And every native Glensman holds his own Glen to his breast. Glencorp, Glentazy and Glenann are charming everyone. But I first fell in love with you in beautiful Glendon. But I first fell in love with you in beautiful Glendon.
So, I have a wee story for you now about a young man and his wife. And they had a 7-year-old son, and they all lived together, and they were a fairly happy family. They were average kind of a family. The young man, his father, was an older man, and as time went on, his father became not that well. And he wasn't really able to look after himself independently. And it was decided he would have to move in with the young family. And he did, but he was an inconvenience to them. They had to clean up after him. They had to change his bed from time to time. And the way it would work would be that they couldn't go out of the house without being sure that he was safe at home, and they were always rushing back. And worst of all, he was a messy eater. Oh, he turned their guts at night when they were sitting at the table eating. He'd be dribbling down the sides of his beard, and food would be getting stuck in it and spilling food off the edge of his plate. Occasionally, he would drop some cutlery on the floor, and once he even broke a plate when it fell and broke. And one evening the wife and the husband were chatting, and the husband said, "You know, he doesn't need to eat with us at all. We could set an old table up in the corner of the room and he could eat on his own. Then we wouldn't have to look at him at least." So that's what happened. From the next evening on, the old man sat and ate his meals separately. Of course, the 7-year-old child was taking it all in. The old man would sit there and eat his meals, sometimes through tear-filled eyes. But you know what the final indignity was? When the young man brought him one night and took his plate away and put a wooden bowl in front of him and a wooden spoon. "There, you'll not break them," he says. So the old man sat night after night eating his food from a wooden bowl while the family enjoyed their meal together. So that was all right. Time went on, and eventually one evening the husband came home and he went in, and there's his 7-year-old sitting cross-legged on the floor, and he's got a lump of wood about this size and a penknife, and he's hacking wee bits out of it. The father watches him and he says, "Son, what are you doing?" And the child says, "I'm making a wooden bowl." And he says, "What are you doing that for?" And he says, "Well, it's for you and Mummy to eat out of when I'm a big grown-up man." And you know, from that night, they brought the old man back to the table. And you know, if he got a bit of food caught in his beard, it didn't upset them anymore. And if he dribbled or spilled food from his plate, they never complained. They would just clean up and smile, because they learned a powerful lesson, and it took a 7-year-old child to teach them it.
Thank you very much. So now, here again from Glendon Old Church, we're going to play a waltz for you. And this waltz is written by a person with the name of J. Unger, and it's called Midnight on the Water.
In 1847, the Irish famine was at its height. It is said that 1 million people emigrated from Ireland to North America and England and Australia. And as many as 3 million people died. At the same time, 1,000 Choctaw natives were being moved off their lands along the Mississippi and marched on what became known as a Trail of Tears to Indian Territory in Oklahoma. And they were the first native people to embark on one of these marches, and they endured great suffering and starvation. But the American government had given them a few dollars to act as a bribe, I suppose we could call it, to move peaceably to new Indian territories. And when they reached Oklahoma, they heard about this great famine in Ireland and about the great suffering that was being endured by the people there. And from the money that they had been given by the American government, they made a collection. And $176 was collected, and they donated that to the Irish Famine Relief Fund. And that started a decades-old relationship between the Irish nation and the Choctaw people. Nowadays, of course, the Irish government provide places for young Choctaw kids to come over and study in Ireland. And a statue was unveiled a couple of years ago down in County Cork, 8 eagle feathers shaped in a bowl, 20 foot high, and it was called Kindred Spirits. And when I heard this story, I was inspired to write a song about it, and that's my small contribution to this relationship with the Choctaw people. And the song is called Kindred Spirits. I was just a young boy, and I didn't understand when my father said, "Be brave, son, we must leave our land. No more hunting by the river for the beaver and the deer. We took all we could carry and our long trail of tears. My people walked in silence, it was the Choctaw way. Our white fathers had commanded, we had to obey. So many of our elders, children fell along the trail. My mother was among those passed beyond the veil. Kindred sorrows, kindred tears, kindred longings, kindred fears, kindred spirits on a trail of tears. We left our sacred mother mound, built of earth and stones, the birthplace of our nation and our ancestors' bones. We bore away our stories, the songs we used to sing. We held on to the Choctaw faith in every living thing. Kindred sorrows, kindred tears, kindred longings, kindred fears, kindred spirits on a trail of tears. When we heard the cries of hunger from a land beyond the waves, broken as we were ourselves, we sent all we could raise. We walked beside those strangers on their distant trail of tears. My father said we were brothers now, across the miles and years. Kindred sorrows, kindred tears, kindred longings, kindred fears, kindred spirits on a trail of tears. We learned of Ireland's troubles, of her valleys green, her mountains and her rivers were just like ours it seemed. Her people just like ours were chaff blowing on the wind. Grief and torment care not for the colour of our skin. Kindred sorrows, kindred tears, kindred longings, kindred fears, kindred spirits on a trail of tears. Kindred sorrows, kindred tears, kindred longings, kindred fears, kindred spirits, kindred spirits.
Thank you very much. We're going to continue now with a couple of reels, and the first of these reels is called Sheepskins and Beeswax, and the second of these reels is called The Reconciliation.
So the story I would like to tell you now has a kind of a basis in truth. And this story comes from County Derry, and it comes from that place between Garva and Dungiven, a place where the townland of Glendon is home to a very ancient grave. And that grave is the grave of a character, a chieftain from the 5th century, who was known locally as the Awartuch. And the Awartuch in Irish, it meant the person of diminutive stature, the undergrown person, but he was a very cruel chieftain. This was at a time when feudal laws governed the land, and the peasants were responsible to the chieftain, and the chieftain was responsible to a king, and the kings were responsible to the high king. But this chieftain treated his people very harshly. He taxed them, he worked them hard, he beat them, they hated him. They, of course, could never stand up to him because he was their senior, their superior, their lord. But they could get another lord to do away with him for them. So they went to the neighbouring chieftain, whose name was the Cahan, and they explained their circumstances, and they asked, would he come and engage the Awartuch and kill him in battle? And the Cahan, I suppose for a price, agreed, and he came and he engaged the Awartuch in battle, and he slew him. And he was buried, and the people rejoiced. He was buried in the manner of a noble, not buried horizontally, like I will be one day, but buried vertically, feet down, head up. This was how royalty and nobles were buried. And the people were happy, because the tyrant was gone. They were happy, that is, for about a day, because the very next evening, as they walked through the townland, who did they see walking among them but the Awartuch, hideously shrunken, shriveled, a bowl in his hand, imploring each person he met to open a vein and give him blood to drink. The people ran in horror. They closed their doors against him. And the next day, in daylight, they went back to the Cahan and they said, you did not do a very good job of slaying our chieftain, for he walks among us, exhorting us to open our veins to him. And the Cahan said, I'll come and kill him again. And he did. He came a second time. He engaged and killed the Awartuch, and he was buried again, upright, in the manner of a noble. And the people rejoiced for about a day, because the next evening, even more grotesque, disgusting pallor on his skin, shriveled skin covered in his bony hands, shuffling along with yellow, bloodshot eyes, his bowl in his hand, this time demanding that they open a vein and feed him blood. They went to the Cahan. They complained loudly. They said, twice you've killed this man and he still walks among us. He's a terror. Do away with him. And the Cahan said, the supernatural is at work here. This is beyond my ability. I will take advice. And he went and he took advice. Some say from a druid, some say from a local saint. And he said, you cannot kill him. If he walks after having been slain twice, he's not dead, nor is he alive. He's one of the Niamh Mearv, the undead. The only way to dispose of him, and it will not kill him, but it will restrain him. He must be killed by piercing his heart with a sword made from the yew tree. He must be buried, not upright like a noble, but inverted with his head down and his feet up. Place a great stone on his grave and scatter the grave round with branches and twigs from the ash and the yew. That will hold him. And this is what happened. The Cahan came, he slew him by piercing his heart with a yew sword. They buried him inverted. They placed a stone over the grave, which is still there today. A tree grows on the grave today that sprang from the twigs and branches that they scattered round the grave. And that should be where the story ends, except that this story was forgotten about for centuries, until the 19th century, when there was a great interest in Dublin in the occult and the paranormal. And there was evenings where people would gather together in houses and tell ghost stories and supernatural tales. Lady Wilde, Oscar Wilde's mother, read the story of the Awartuch to the collected room of occultists, the story of the Awartuch from the 5th century. We know that in the audience, in that room, there was a young Dublin civil servant His name was Abraham. His second name was Stoker. We would know him better as Bram Stoker. And we know he was there, and we know that he heard that story firsthand. The story of a man who could only be killed by piercing his heart with a wooden stake, who drank blood, and who could not be killed. Bram Stoker left very little to show us the sources for his very famous Dracula story. But we know that, for example, he visited a place called McGillicuddy Reeks, and that a historian had said there was a fort that existed, or the ruins of a fort, which was known as Dundrochula in Irish, which means the place of bad blood. We further know that Stoker never travelled in Eastern Europe. The furthest east that he went was Vienna. We know that as a child he had a mystery illness which kept him bedbound for several years. We know that the treatment that Stoker received was that the doctor would arrive each day and place a bowl beneath his arm and open a vein, because they believed that one way to solve disease was to bleed it out of the patients. He had a terror of blood and blood loss. And finally, during Stoker's life in Dublin, the corporation were building infrastructure, and they had the roads dug up, and they found ancient tombs buried beneath Dublin. And in those tombs, the particular quality of the soil, the geology, meant that when they opened some of the coffins, the people were preserved as if they had just died yesterday. So we know that in the early 20th century, they would have been sensitive enough to handle that in a non-sensationalist way. No, they put them on exhibition. They charged the public to come and look at the bodies. We know that Stoker very possibly saw the dead in their coffins for centuries, who looked as if they breathed their last just a day ago. So, if anybody ever asks you if you know the story of Count Dracula, you say, "Of course I do. Sure, he was an Irish man."
Adieu to you, my Dinah, 10,000 times adieu. We're going away from the holy ground and the girls that we love true. We'll sail the salt sea over and then return for shore to see again the girls we love and the holy ground once more. Fine girl you are, you're the girl I do adore, and still I live in hopes to see the holy ground once more. I see the storm arising, I see it coming soon, and the sky is so cloudy you can scarcely see the moon. And the good old ship, she was tossing about, and the rigging was all tore, and still I live in hopes to see the holy ground once more. Fine girl you are, you're the girl I do adore, and still I live in hopes to see the holy ground once more. And now the storm is over, and we are safe on the shore. We'll drink a toast to the holy ground and the girls that we love adore. We'll drink strong ale and porter and make the rafters roar. And when our money is all spent, we will go to sea once more. Fine girl you are, you're the girl I do adore, and still I live in hopes to see the holy ground once more. Fine girl you are, you're the girl I do adore, and still I live in hopes to see the holy ground once more. Fine girl you are.